You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. Deadly storms. Helene continues to carve a path of destruction across the eastern half of the U.S. as fatalities climb. A look at the damage as communities are left to rebuild.
The best way forward, in our view, is a diplomatic effort, diplomatic solution.
The U.S. working in overdrive as the ongoing Mideast war threatens to widen after a fresh round of widespread Israeli strikes in Lebanon targeting Hezbollah that Iran says changes the rules of the game. Then more and more programs cropping up to curb the troubling rise in traffic deaths. But are they fulfilling their intended goals? We investigate what may not be working. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. We are tracking the remnants of Helene, now a tropical depression currently over the Cincinnati area. And it is a big storm today, bringing heavy rain from Arkansas all the way to New York, leaving behind a path of destruction and immense flooding across several states. And you can see right here, this is video out of North Carolina from earlier today. Several counties across the western part of the state issuing evacuation orders as Helene passed over as a tropical storm this morning. Shelters opened for those who could not get out. In Rutherford County, North Carolina, mandatory evacuations underway as the Lake Lure Dam is under a failure warning. All residents have been directed to seek higher ground until at least 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. Of course, the worst of the storm was in Florida as Helene hit last night as a Category 4 hurricane, the strongest hurricane to ever hit Florida's Big Bend. This is a picture of Sarasota this morning, completely underwater. And tragically, more than 24 fatalities have been reported. AP tracking at least 30 across 4 states. We are seeing video right now out of Treasure Island, Florida. Officials recorded a storm surge of over 15 feet above ground level last night. At least 5 fatalities were reported in this county alone. And then if you have a look at Atlanta, Georgia, we do know that in the state of Georgia, according to Governor Brian Kemp, at least 2 dying there, and in North Carolina, 2 dying there with 3 more in South Carolina. And when it comes to power outages, more than 4 million people across 9 separate states without power tonight. South Carolina and Georgia, both more than 1 million customers in the dark. Florida close behind with 940,000 roughly. Power outages also being reported in North Carolina, West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. These numbers could fluctuate as states continue to deal with the aftermath of the monstrous storm. And we go now live to Perry, Florida, where we find Megan Scarano. Megan, you've been traveling across the Florida coast today. What have you seen?
We're here in Taylor County, Florida, where Hurricane Helene made landfall overnight as a Category 4 storm. And today, the people are seeing this devastation left behind. I talked to one woman here today who tells me everything she owned in her business on the first floor is now in the Gulf of Mexico. Everything else is just gone or in the marsh. She tells me it's just complete devastation. And for her, this is worse than Adelia that hit about a year ago. So this county, this area, as we are driving in, there were just trees down, power lines down. The sheriff telling us that many people are without power here, and there's really no timeline on when that could be brought back up. He also said that 90% of Keaton Beach here on the coast is also just devastated.
And Megan, what do we know about the extensive relief efforts that are now underway? I assume people are already going into cleanup mode.
Oh, yes. And the one woman I talked to today who told me what she had is in the Gulf of Mexico. She said it's hard to get insurance here. After Adelia, insurers won't insure their property. So they need the good people who are here behind me setting up a mass feeding station. They need people just like this. This plans to feed about 5,000 to 10,000 people a day, over 100,000 people in the next week alone. These are volunteers who are coming. We can tell that they plan to be here for a while because they're bringing suitcases suitcases, they're bringing pillows with them to help this area recover because there's just so much devastation. This area also got a visit from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis today. The sheriff telling me that Governor DeSantis is sending linemen to get this area back up and running. I will tell you there are generators here on every corner. Taylor County is running on generators here. Live in Perry, Megan Scarano.
Really reassuring. So happy to see that they're getting the help they so desperately need today after such a devastating hurricane hit. From Perry, Florida, Megan Scarano, thank you so much for that. Vice President Kamala Harris is visiting the southern border tonight in Douglas, Arizona, home to the state's second largest border entry point. Sources say Harris will discuss security and emphasize her plan to push for a tough bipartisan border deal. This is Harris's first visit to the border as a presidential nominee. Immigration is one of the most impactful issues in this year's election. Gun laws are another top issue for voters, and where exactly Harris stands on this is coming into question. The National News Desk's Kayla Gaskins takes a closer look.
During Thursday's gun violence event at the White House, Kamala Harris calling for stricter gun control laws.
And I believe we need to reinstate the assault weapons ban and pass universal background checks, safe storage laws, and red flag laws.
But she's also branding herself as a proud gun owner while on the campaign trail.
I and Tim Walz are both gun owners. We will not take anybody's guns away.
Critics pointing out Harris supported banning handguns earlier in her career. In 2005, while serving as district attorney of San Francisco, Harris sponsored Proposition H, which banned San Francisco residents from buying, owning, and even possessing handguns. The law struck down by state court before taking effect. Video also emerging from 2007 of Harris saying cops should be able to enter gun owners' homes to ensure safe storage.
Because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affairs.
Trump hitting Harris on the issue.
She wants to take away your guns and your rifles in violation of the Second Amendment.
Reporters asking the White House on Thursday to clarify where Harris stands on guns.
When it comes to the VP and owning a gun, she can speak for herself. The campaign could speak for that. Her office can speak for that.
Harris did speak to the topic while chatting with Oprah last week.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump has promised to protect gun rights by appointing federal judges who oppose new firearm limits should he win in November. And Amira, guns have received very little attention this election cycle. While still a top issue for voters, it does trail behind the economy, inflation, the border, and reproductive rights for many.
And Kayla, it kind of flew under the radar, but yesterday President Biden signed an executive order aimed at curbing gun violence. What can you tell us about what he put into motion?
So the executive order aims to improve school-based active shooter drills so students are better prepared in case of emergency situations. It also establishes an emergency firearms threats task force, and it eliminates gun conversion devices. The order comes just days after the mass shooting in Birmingham, Alabama, that left 4 dead and 17 wounded. Amira.
All right, lots of good information there. Kayla Gaskins reporting live in D.C. for us. Thank you. Former President Donald Trump holding a town hall right now with auto workers at a community college in Warren, Michigan. Earlier today, he met with Ukrainian President Zelensky, who's been in the United States, asking for more help in the war against Russia.
We're going to work very much with both parties to try and get this settled and get it worked out. It has to end at some point. It has to end. He's gone through hell, and this country has gone through hell like few countries have ever, like it's happened anywhere. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It's a terrible situation.
And Trump said after the meeting that he wants a, quote, fair deal for everybody to end the war. Zelensky says he did invite Trump to visit his country. Tonight, Iran says the rules of the game have been changed as Israel now braces for retaliation after the Israeli military carried out airstrikes on what it says were Hezbollah's headquarters in the Lebanese capital of Beirut, saying the group's leader Hassan Nasrallah was the target. The explosion leveled several buildings in the city's southern suburbs. Nasrallah's condition, that remains unconfirmed. This as Lebanon's health ministry says the death toll has risen to 6, with 91 people wounded. Critics of Israel's war campaign say the IDF isn't doing enough to protect civilians, with questions of whether war crimes are being committed. Israel saying it doesn't deserve the blame for civilian casualties.
Hezbollah's central headquarters was intentionally built under residential buildings in the heart of the Dahiya in Beirut, as part of Hezbollah's strategy of using Lebanese people as human shields.
The strike came just after a defiant Benjamin Netanyahu spoke before the United Nations in New York, vowing not to stop its fight in the face of increasing global criticism and calls for Israel to agree to a temporary ceasefire in both Lebanon and in Gaza. Meantime, tonight, the Houthi military, a Yemeni rebel group, has claimed attacks on U.S. warships in the Red Sea. Rebels saying they've targeted 3 American Navy destroyers with 23 ballistic missiles and drones that they say were on their way to support Israel. Those missiles, according to Reuters, were intercepted. The Iran-aligned group pledged today to continue its attacks on Israel and other Western-linked targets until Israel's military offensives in Lebanon and Gaza stop. New York Mayor Eric Adams pleading not guilty to 5 counts, including bribery, in a New York court today. Prosecutors say he accepted illegal foreign campaign contributions and lavish gifts and travel upgrades. Adams says he did not break the law, and all actions he took were within his capacity as mayor. If convicted, he faces up to 45 years in prison. Adams says he will not resign, and Governor Kathy Hochul says she is reviewing the indictment before taking any actions.
It's critically important that we continue to maintain the confidence of New Yorkers. They are anxious right now. I can feel it. I know this. And anything I can do as the leader of this great state to assure them that they are in good hands, we will make sure we get through this.
And some somber news to report. Beloved British actress Maggie Smith has died. Smith's career spanned 7 decades, over which she won 2 Oscars, 4 Emmys, 3 Golden Globes, and 4 Tony Awards. Smith was well known with American audiences for her roles in Downton Abbey and the Harry Potter films. She's survived by her 2 sons and 5 grandkids. She was 89 years old. Coming up, the action taken by the United States against Iranian hackers accused of stealing from the Trump campaign. Then how inflation has been trending recently and what that could mean for future interest rate cuts. And later, a closer look at the initiatives meant to curb concerning trends in traffic pedestrian deaths. What our team is discovering about how well supposedly helpful programs are working. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are continuing to track now post-tropical cyclone Helene, which has devastated communities across the southeast since making landfall as a Category 4 hurricane last night in Florida. Right now, Helene impacting several states in the east with heavy rain and winds. And you can see here a live look at one of the states now in the storm's path, and that is Ohio. This is Cincinnati, where rain has been hitting the area on and off. We're going to be following developments on Helene, both its current status as well as the tremendous aftermath throughout the night for you. And you can stay up to the date 24/7 on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. Also tonight, federal prosecutors taking action against Iranian hackers after a summer full of warnings from intelligence officials about possible election interference. As the National News Desk's Matt Gelka tells us, the move comes after alleged hacks of the Trump campaign.
The defendants' own words make clear that they were attempting to undermine former President Trump's campaign in advance of the 2024 U.S. presidential election.
Multiple Iranians face criminal charges for allegedly hacking into Donald Trump's campaign. A grand jury indicted 3 hackers tied to the Iranian government this week for cybercrimes, allowing them to access Trump campaign material.
The American people, not a foreign power, decide the outcome of our country's elections.
Prosecutors say between June and August, the hackers stole debate prep, vice presidential vetting material, and emails from Trump's campaign. Some of the stolen documents were sent to journalists, with almost all of the outlets choosing not to publish what they received. The materials were also sent to members of the Biden campaign before it turned into the Kamala Harris campaign. Harris's team says they didn't use anything that was sent by the alleged hackers.
Our enemies are desperate to prevent Donald Trump from returning to the White House.
Along with the hacking, the Trump campaign says they've been briefed on credible threats from Iran to try and assassinate him. Trump's administration authorized the killing of a top Iranian military commander in 2020 and pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal in 2018. The U.S. is offering a $20 million reward for info leading to the arrest of a different Iranian national accused of plotting to kill former Trump national security advisor John Bolton.
This is something we've been tracking very intensely for a long time, an ongoing threat by Iran against a number of senior officials, including former government officials.
Surprisingly, the former president said this week he was still open to negotiating with Tehran on a new nuclear agreement if he gets reelected.
We have to make a deal because the consequences are impossible. We have to make a deal. And they would have had a deal.
The hackers remain in Iran, meaning it's unlikely they'll ever face prosecution. But the Justice Department hopes that by publicly naming the charges, they'll deter future hacking attempts. For the National News Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Matt, thank you. Price increases are cooling down, potentially clearing a path for more federal interest rate cuts. The Commerce Department says prices rose just 0.1% from July to August, and inflation fell to 2.2% when compared to the year before, barely above the Fed's inflation target rate of 2%. Last week, the central bank cut its benchmark interest rate by 0.5 point, a dramatic change. And homeowners who took out mortgages when rates were at their peak are now rushing to refinance. According to Mortgage Bankers Association, this is going to save Americans hundreds of dollars a month in mortgage payments, allowing them to spend that money elsewhere. But those who bought before 2022, where they are already enjoying low rates, meaning less refinance activity than we would normally see. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Nevada, a pivotal state in the 2024 election, and voters there say they are concerned.
Bullhead City, Arizona, reportedly one of the most affordable places to live. But the economy is still top of mind for many of the residents we met there recently.
The economy, it's horrible.
I spend twice as much money as I've ever spent.
For me, we're doomed if Trump doesn't win.
Well, we're living with it, and this is the way it goes until we get something new.
This couple believes that something new comes with electing Vice President Kamala Harris. But others are counting on former President Donald Trump to improve the economy and the immigration system, especially since they live in a border state.
Emotions are running high at Pacific University. The school confirmed Thursday that there have been incidents of racist and threatening messages towards Black women online, among suggestions of a race war and the use of racial slurs. Students sharing their piece.
This has not happened in my 3+ years I've been here. So it's very interesting, and it's a little eye-opening on just the thoughts and the words that have been said.
Everyone just needs to come together and realize there's no place for that, especially at a school like ours.
They were born and raised here. They came to Pawtucket. It's where they started. And I really think they recognize that.
Pawtucket Mayor Donald Grebian does not want to see Hasbro leave. Word got out last week that Hasbro is considering moving its Pawtucket-based headquarters to Boston. The toy company has considered moving its headquarters a few times over the past decade.
Well, it's not that outgrown it, but this facility's outdated.
Speaker of the House Joe Shekarchi, Governor Dan McKee, and Hasbro's CEO met last Thursday.
It's very sensitive right now, and I don't want to go into the details of anything until we have something really to report. But I can say this, I think it's not going to be a very fast decision.
Well, coming up, what needs to be done to reverse a startling rise in traffic deaths in the last 10 years? We're back after this. Driving on U.S. roads has gotten more dangerous over the past decade, with a 30% increase in traffic fatalities since 2014. During that time, many cities around the country have adopted traffic safety programs like Vision Zero to help reduce traffic deaths. But in most places, it's not working. Spotlight on America correspondent Angie Moreski digs into the data.
More than 40,000 people are killed every year on our nation's roads, and the numbers are especially troubling for pedestrians and cyclists.
My biggest concern is always being hit by a car.
Philly Bike Action organizer Chris Dasher and his fellow cyclists have had enough.
City Council! God speak now!
They're calling for better protection for cyclists and pedestrians after 3 people were killed in just a few weeks this summer, including a beloved pediatric cancer doctor who was run down by a speeding driver in a bike lane.
It's been really a heartbreaking summer. This didn't have to happen. It didn't have to be that way.
And it's not just Philadelphia. Nationwide, since 2019, we've seen an overall 17% increase in traffic fatalities, with 20% more pedestrians and nearly 30% more cyclists killed. Philly Bike Action took their fight to City Hall, protesting a cut in the city's budget for Vision Zero. an internationally recognized traffic safety strategy to reduce traffic deaths and serious injuries through infrastructure changes. It focuses on things like green and concrete protected bike lanes, high visibility crosswalks, lane reductions known as speed diets, road humps, and lower speed limits. Here's the big spike. What happened right there?
When COVID hit, we saw a pretty significant jump.
Center for Auto Safety Executive Director Michael Brooks says the spike in traffic fatalities started in 2020 and peaked in 2022. The leading causes: speeding and aggressive driving, distracted driving, alcohol and drug use, and lack of seatbelt use.
The data suggests that from the pandemic through, now, most of the people who are engaged in these risky behaviors are men and young men.
This 2023 International Transport Forum Road Safety Report found 34 member countries averaged a 6.5% drop in road deaths from before the pandemic to 2022, compared to a 16% increase in the U.S. But it's not for lack of trying here. More than 50 U.S. communities have committed to Vision Zero. Why are we not seeing that success here in the U.S.?
There's been lip service paid to the idea of Vision Zero, but the actual work that needs to be done on the ground to introduce infrastructure improvements and to, dedicate money to making those improvements hasn't been done.
But that takes investment from city governments, something these Philly residents say they will keep fighting for.
We know what we need to do to make things safe. We can bring it to zero. Traffic deaths are not inevitable.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
A former president days away from becoming a centenarian. That's Jimmy Carter, of course. He's the longest lived American president, and he turns 100 years old on Monday. Quite a remarkable milestone, given Carter entered hospice care over a year ago. His wife, you may remember, Rosalind, who also entered hospice care after him, she passed away last year. Known for his work to find peaceful solutions to international conflicts, the 39th president won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. And earlier this month, birthday celebrations began in his honor, including a star-studded concert in Atlanta. And more celebrations are sure to come. That does it for this edition of the National News Desk. Have yourself a wonderful weekend.